Hi, y'all. I'm Obscure Girl. I like movies. I like weird movies. I like weird, trippy, obscure movies that I feel like no one has seen or is talking about. Whether that be because the marketing was so bad, or because it's just old, or because you're like, I think that was a fever dream I had when I was 5. I'm here to tell you it wasn't. Let's talk about it. However, I should also mention that in spite of me being a lover of the obscure and the trippy and the not heard of, I'm also a total junkie for award season. The award season is my football, the Academy Awards, the Oscars is my Super Bowl, and I get a little bloodthirsty with it. And I think it's all too appropriate that I should talk about that here because lately, the nominees are movies that even I hadn't heard of before. I watched the Golden Globes this year, and there were at least 3 movies that were sweeping all of the awards that I'd never heard of at all. And I watch like a lot of YouTube. I watch, a lot of review shows, things like that. That's what inspired me to make my own. But like, even with that, never seen a single trailer, never heard any buzz, nothing about a couple of these movies. So I thought, you probably haven't either. So why don't we talk about some of those? And then I'll have an episode talking about my predictions and the ones I want to win, and I'll have a couple reaction videos. But yeah, so right now, we're going to be talking about one of those more obscure movies that is up for quite a few awards this year. And I'm going to start off with the one that would probably end up in this category, even if it wasn't nominated for so many awards. Because this movie, it's trippy. It's obscure. In all honesty, I think this is a 1970s Ed Wood film that they just gave a budget and made today. I'm talking about Bugonia. It's cool. This movie was released in October of last year. It is starring Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone. And yeah, I really, when watching this movie, just kept thinking like, this feels like a 1970s or 1960s sci-fi, like something I would see on Elvira or on MST3K, but just in color and with a budget and known actors. But this feels like an Ed Wood film. It is crazy. So the non-spoiler premise of this, Jesse Plemons plays a very, let's just say, mentally disturbed character named Teddy, and he convinces his young neurodivergent cousin Don that aliens are invading and they are implementing themselves in high positions of power, and that Emma Stone's character Michelle, who is the high-powered CEO of a pharmaceutical company, is one of those aliens, and they need to kidnap and interrogate her and find some way to get aboard her ship and negotiate for the aliens to leave the planet. And the whole movie, you're kind of shifting between this whole, like, okay, he's crazy, or is she actually an alien? That is the non-spoiler premise, and that's pretty much as I can give you. We are going to go into full spoilers in just a second. I just kind of wanted to, give out a couple general things here. The score is doing the heavy hitting for this. A lot of heavy hitting, and it is absolutely crazy because I just found out that the composer wasn't given the script. He was just given 3 key words and later was told that Emma Stone was going to shave her head. That was all he had to go off of, and he made this crazy score that is going off in really random locations. It is going up for Best Original Score at the Oscars though, and this might be the one award for this film that I am potentially pulling for. We'll get to that when we get to my episode on it. Now then, spoilers from this point forward. Full spoilers. This is a newer movie. It's not seen widely by a lot of people yet. I'm going to spoil it. Okay? Okay. So the movie starts out talking about bees and how they function and why they're important for the world, and that they are dying out and disappearing.
The bee's disappearing. The bee's disappearing!
This is all due to colony collapse disorder, and how it's kind of signifying this is also what is happening to the human race. Just the bees, it's happening to faster. And this is what Teddy is explaining to his cousin Don is the proof that aliens are on this planet and they are taking over and they are trying to wipe us out. Now, Don, you can tell very quickly, is pretty developmentally behind. He does not have the mental facilities of a man his own age. And Teddy is the one who's been taking care of him. But Teddy can barely take care of himself. He is very much into conspiracy theories. He has all these ridiculous beliefs that he believes into his core. Also to the point where he has all these theories about how these aliens function, what they do, how they work, how he can block their signal to their other aliens, whole thing. And that he believes that this high-powered CEO, played by Emma Stone, named Michelle, is one of those aliens. And then we go to Michelle. She's weird. She's definitely weird. Unfortunately, this could also just be, the behavior of an out-of-touch CEO. She is very, very strict with her beauty and her fitness regimen. She uses those ultraviolet masks. She does so much yoga. She takes defense courses, things like that. She is very, very on the ball. She's also not a great CEO. You can tell that, she has this conversation with one of her employees about, I want people to have a work-life balance. However, if your work isn't done by 5, you should absolutely get it done. But you should be home by 5, but you should get your work done. Really just kind of like, all right, this is a weird person, but I've met this person. I've worked in a cubicle and been looked over by this person. So that is kind of the beauty of this movie, is how it takes people on both sides of the class system that have been reaching these extremes to the point where they no longer seem sane or human. That is something that's really cool about this movie. That's probably the one thing keeping it from being a full-blown MST3K flick, is because there is a message here. But Teddy convinces Don that they have to kidnap the CEO so that they can negotiate for the release of Earth from the alien overlords, and that this woman is the key to getting them to be able to do that. So there's all these scenes with them getting supplies, with them mentally and physically preparing, including chemical castration, so that there is nothing distracting them from the mission, with her being an attractive woman and all. So they go and they end up kidnapping her at her house. She does not go down without a fight, hence those self-defense courses. And it is really hard for them to actually get her down until she runs away and they're able to trank gun her. Then there's a scene in the car where they are shaving her head, and they actually did this because apparently her hair follicles are what is able to have her other aliens be able to track her. They also cover her completely in antihistamine lotion because that's another way she could be tracked by the aliens. Meanwhile, they're not doing really any work to hide their tracks from the actual, human police, because that's not what they're concerned about. They're concerned about the alien overlords finding her. And they end up chaining her down in this basement, covered in lotion with a shaved head. I can only imagine how uncomfortable that was to film. But when she's down there, the guys actually end up suiting up and go downstairs they're trying to be the diplomats for the planet Earth. They're trying to be our ambassadors. So they're trying to be taken seriously while chaining this woman up, shaving her head and covering her in lotion in their basement. But they actually end up reading her the Geneva Convention rights. And you can tell, as much as Teddy is trying to be civil here, he's seething underneath. It is very cold and detached. You can tell he wants to do horrible things to this woman, but he's trying to be very civil and treat her not as a human being, but as an ambassador of another place. So while Teddy is trying to convince Michelle to let them meet their leaders and negotiate for the release of the planet, Don wants to go with the aliens when they leave. This is our first clue to the mental state of Dawn. So they're trying to do all this. Obviously, she's trying to act like the CEO. She wants to have the control of the situation. She seems very insulted, pretty much, that she has to deal with these people, that she's basically considering children throwing a temper tantrum, and she just wants to have control of the situation like always. And she's trying to explain to them, this is why I'm gonna be found. You're gonna get in trouble. You might as well just let me go. And this is when Teddy is starting to lose his cool and says, I'm actually being quite polite here instead of just gutting you. So that's our clue to the mental state of Teddy. Okay? Okay. And then later, when Teddy and Don are alone, and Don is starting to kind of waver because of the whole human condition thing, and starting to worry about, taking care of her, like, oh my God, she's down there, this is awful. And Teddy's just like, listen, even if she's not an alien, which she is, she's still evil. She's still doing all these horrible things to people on the planet. Like, don't even feel for her. It's not worth your time. Which is also indicating, so not only is Teddy so firmly in this belief, but he's going to rationalize literally anything he does to this woman, and that is unhinged and terrifying. And now we get to the real meat of the movie, when we get our first flashback to Teddy as like a teenager, basically, like, I don't know if they used practical effects or de-aged him, but they might have just shaved his beard, honestly. But this is a full black and white flashback, so you know that's what it is, to Teddy's mom, played by Alicia Silverstone. And I'm sorry, this is the real star performance of this movie. Alicia Silverstone is playing Teddy's mom, who was part of this drug trial from Michelle's pharmaceutical company that had horrible side effects, but she was it was a drug trial to cure addiction, basically. And they just show her with like all of these strings and needles coming out of her, and you can tell this is very much how Teddy saw it, as like a kid who just would be in a hospital bed seeing all these tubes coming out of his mom. It's a really dramatic showing. They made some choices here that I think were absolutely brilliant. But she's the one who put all this crazy in his head. She was filling him with all these conspiracy theories. You can't tell if because that was just what she believed beforehand, or if this is what the drug trial is making her believe. But she is so manipulative and so controlling, and she puts all of this into Teddy's head, and also makes Teddy think that all of this is partly his fault. That she did all of this for him, her sweet boy, so she could be a better mom to him. And with those words, instilling him with all of this guilt that this is what's become of his mom. And instead of actually internalizing that guilt, he blames the company that put her on the drug trial in the first place. And that is where Michelle comes into all of this, and that explains a big chunk of it. Then we show Teddy riding his bike down the street, and the score is going ham. Oh my God. This is one of those, if you hear like a guess the score kind of test on YouTube or something, you're not going to guess this movie, because in a way it fits, but in most ways, you're not going to guess the soundtrack. And Teddy gets pulled over while on his bike by this police officer. This is the other meat of this movie. This police officer used to be Teddy's babysitter when he was younger. And they never flat out say it, but they make it very clear that this cop abused him as a kid. And they hold on his scenes. He's got 2 scenes in the movie. They hold on them for so long while he is over-explaining and kind of apologizing, but also not taking accountability and just kind of veering off like, it's not like I enjoyed any of this. It was just like a power struggle thing. None of this makes this okay. And it just makes it more and more awkward. And the whole time Teddy's just trying to brush him off like, yeah, man, whatever. But it's so cringeworthy and so uncomfortable, and so shows why Teddy is the way he is. Between drug-addicted, manipulative, controlling, crazy mother, and having an abusive babysitter, no dad in the picture, he needs some control, and he's blaming literally things outside of the universe, because that has to be why he's in this position in life. Back to the basement, Teddy is still trying to do the diplomat thing and is still trying to, negotiate with Michelle. Michelle's still trying to do the controlling CEO thing, and she is basically condescending to Teddy. She is being very kind of manipulative in the situation as well, but just very cold, detached, and condescending as hell. So Teddy finally snaps and slaps the crap out of her. And this is the first time you see any kind of not just fear, but anger at the situation. And Teddy makes a comment, everyone denies it at first, but eventually they come around and admit what they are. And it's like, how many people has he done this to before Don came to live with him? Oh boy. And that's also the immediate message that Michelle gets, but also that Don gets, because Don is like, wait a minute, what? So then Teddy decides to move to the next phase and electrocutes Michelle. And it's getting really intense, it's getting really insane, and she's taking voltage that is beyond what humans should be able to take. And this is kind of the first thing where you're like, is she an alien? Like, I know she's weird, but like, huh. And to Teddy, this fully confirms not only is she an alien, or an Andromedon, as he says that's the name of their race, but that she must be of the royal family, because no one has been able to take that voltage before. Again, how many people have you done this to? Dude! And you just have this in your basement. What is this world? So then he immediately changes his tone and dresses her up in his mom's clothes. And when she sees that, she finally remembers who Teddy is. And that not only knows that his mom was part of the drug trial, but that she actually ended up in a coma because of it. And she has been paying for her long-term care. And she remembers telling Teddy and being very like, she's giving out the party line of apologetic, while also being super cold, detached, and like, these things happen, but we'll take care of her. Like, we'll pay for all of this, blah, blah, blah. So now she's kind of getting more of the picture that, you know, even if it wasn't this whole alien thing, they were still coming after her specifically. But we also see from this flashback that while Teddy was like a young teen at the time, Michelle hasn't aged. And that could very much be because of her very intensive, you know, beauty and fitness regimen. It could also be that she's, you know, crazy rich and could have had plastic surgery. But again, this is really teetering that line of, is she, isn't she? But Teddy is now treating her with a lot more respect. He lets her up to eat dinner with them. He gives her clothes. He's very apologetic. Like, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that you were a member of the royal family. And he's trying to change the game basically because he knows he can directly deal with her now, not just use her as a bargaining chip to get on the ship, which has to happen by the lunar eclipse, by the way. Just more conspiracy stuff. So she does try to bring up with him about, like, I remember you, I remember your mom. And he's like, it's not about my mom. And he's really starting to snap at any mention of his mom or any mention of their prior history together. And instead, he decides to talk about the bees and the colony collapse disorder. And she actually talks about how she really admires bees and their work ethic and their thought of the whole as opposed to the individual. And then Teddy goes, so why are you killing them? And she's like, actually, the bees are getting better and stronger in more recent tests. And Teddy's just not believing that whatsoever because he is phoned in, he is committed. This is what he believes and nothing is going to change his mind. And that's where we lose people because confirmation bias is really, certainty is the enemy. People need to be open for discussion. Anyway. But once again, she brings up his mom, offers to pay for better care for her as well as care for him, and he full out snaps, rushed like animal crawls across the table and starts strangling her. Of course, she ends up getting the upper hand because she is way more trained in, you know, combat than he is, and then Don ends up knocking her out. Just in time for the cop to show up at the house. Yes, that same babysitter cop. One more scene with this guy. So they end up, Don takes her downstairs and tells her to keep quiet and has the shotgun. Teddy is upstairs with the cop, and once again, the cop actually doesn't think Teddy has her, but he's like, hey, have you seen her? Her car was seen in this area, her cell phone pinged around here, like, have you seen anything? Again, not thinking that Teddy had anything to do with it, but obviously kind of just wanted to see Teddy again, so he can have another one of those long, drawn-out, awkward conversations where he's trying to apologize, but also just find a way to spend more time with Teddy. It's so uncomfortable. And once again, Teddy's just completely shut down to it. He's like, whatever, man, you gotta get out of here kind of thing, but is also trying to not be suspicious. And it's just, yeah. So he's like, do you want to come see my bees? And so the police officer, who still wants to spend time with him, it's like, yeah, I want to see your bees. So they go outside. Meanwhile, Michelle is left alone with Don. This is the first time that has happened. And Don is basically asking her, like, hey, when you leave on your ship, if you're an alien, can you take us with you? And Michelle goes, I can absolutely take you with me. Probably not Teddy. Teddy's probably going to jail. I'm just being honest. Like, there's a police officer up with him right now. They're gonna find out I'm down here. You can probably get away with this and come with me on my spaceship and we can leave together. but Teddy's probably going to jail. And you see the shift in Don's face as he decides, okay, because first of all, Teddy's the only person he has in the world. This is the person who's been taking care of him, the one that has been there, the one that has given him this new purpose in life. And Don, for the first time kind of in the movie, smiles and seems at peace and goes, I'm ready to leave now. And Michelle's like, okay, great. And Teddy uses the shotgun on himself. Michelle is covered in the red stuff. And they hear the shot outside, of course. At this point, Teddy ends up killing the cop and comes inside and is ready to kill Michelle. And at this point, Michelle drops the human act and is kind of playing along with his, alien fantasies and everything. And says that actually there is a cure for his mom. They had been experimenting on her. She has the cure. It's disguised as antifreeze in the back of her car. So he immediately takes off believing her and injects his mom's PICC line with antifreeze. So he just killed his mom. She's gone. And he has also left the building. So he then comes back. But meanwhile, Michelle gets herself free, but isn't able to leave the basement. So she's snooping around and she finds this hidden room. In this hidden room are several former test subjects. She sees heads in jars, she sees bodies, she sees all of his detailed autopsy notes and just regular test notes in general. And instead of looking horrified, she looks angry. So he comes back and she is completely done. Act is dropped. She explains to him why the Andromedons came to this planet in the first place. But first she asks him how many of those were Andromedons. And he goes, only 2. So he's killed multiple humans thinking they were aliens, wasn't even sorry and just did tests on them anyway. So now she starts explaining that the Andromedons had first come to this planet and were fascinated by it, but then felt extreme guilt because they accidentally did a test that ended up killing the dinosaurs. So then they recreated humans in their image and have been trying to keep them alive ever since, despite their self-destructive tendencies. And actually, the drug test was testing on human beings, but it was trying to find a way to eradicate that self-destruct gene in them. So his mom was a perfect candidate because she was a drug addict. And she finally agrees that she will take him to the Emperor, which is in her office. So they end up going back to the office, and she says that the portal is in the closet, and actually that her calculator on the desk is like the keypad. And at this point, you're like, all right, did she make up the alien stuff now? And she's just trying to stall? Or is this just really like the operation? So Teddy's like, I'm going first. And he has a bomb strapped to his chest just to prove that he's serious and means business. So he ends up going into the closet and she like types his code into the calculator and backs up and does a countdown. And then the closet explodes with Teddy inside of it. And it's actually pretty graphic. Teddy's skull actually explodes out, but knocks out Michelle. So then Michelle comes to in an ambulance where the paramedics are just trying to explain away why the explosion happened, like just sciencey stuff that, seems pretty excuse-y. Like those excuses people make when they can't explain the supernatural, so they just come up with stuff to make themselves feel better. That kind of thing. But at this point, all bets are off that she is not an alien because she ends up escaping out of the back of the ambulance, hobbles her way back to her office, types in the calculator, and ends up going back into the closet that is filled with gore, and ends up coming out of this pit of ooze on her ship. Not only was she a member of the royal family, she was the emperor this whole time of the Andromedons. And I love the design for the Andromedons because, again, they look like people, but they are covered in those super thick, like soft knit sweater, like onesies and like big knit hats. And they just look so cozy and I love it. And she basically says, like, yeah, they've been trying to help humans up to this point. She really thought that there was hope for them with getting rid of their self-destructive tendencies. But now she sees that they are a lost cause and it's time to pull the plug on the experiment. So she goes to this giant model of the Earth and pops the bubble around it. And the movie ends with Marlene Dietrich's Where Have All the Flowers Gone, as you see this very comically prolonged scene of everyone in the world who has simultaneously suddenly stopped living in all these different areas of all ages. Meanwhile, all the animals and the bees are still alive, and I couldn't help but think about that one thing in Love, Death, Robots.
I guess this means we are extending our vacation, right?
But that was Bugonia. It's kind of crazy. The main thing that I do want to bring up about this movie is it is up for several awards. It's up for Best Picture, which again, as a movie that reminds me so much of a bad 1960s sci-fi, it just makes me think, one, how? And two, could we have zhuzhed up those movies in the past and they would have been Oscar worthy too? I need answers. The other thing is, Jesse Plemons was not nominated for Best Actor or even Best Supporting Actor in this, but Emma Stone was. And I love Emma Stone. She was fantastic in this. She's not the one I would have given the award nod to. I would have given it to Jesse Plemons. I've seen Emma Stone in a lot better performances, honestly. Like, yeah, she was great in this, but she was better in other things. And I think Jesse Plemons would have definitely been the one I would give the award to. And Alicia Silverstone. She's in the movie Conscious for maybe 5 minutes, but in that 5 minutes, oh my God, unbelievable. And so that's kind of the real thing I wanted to leave with, that is my confusion on all of these things. How this ended up in award season at all is kind of still baffling to me a little bit, with the exception of the super high-powered cast and director. But there you have it. That's Bugonia. We're going to talk about one, maybe two more Oscar noms that I had never heard of before the nominations came out. And as well, like I said, as my predictions and wishes and stuff. But yeah. So, that's Bugonia. If you could subscribe to my channel, I'd super appreciate it, especially with this award season. Just give me that pat on the back that I'm going in the right direction with this channel. Also, if you can check me out on Patreon, maybe help me up the lighting and some of the effects in this show. If you could like this video at all, that would be such a nice help. If you want to comment what you thought of Bugonia if you saw it, because this is definitely one I think more people have seen, but it's still pretty on the obscure side. And again, traditionally in any other year, I feel like this would have been a completely swept under the rug movie. Let's talk about that. I really want to talk about that because I have comments and concerns. I've been Obscure Girl, and the rest is confetti.